My name is Kay, and at 31, I manage a thriving tech company, one my family remains blissfully unaware of. When I made plans to return home for my 32nd birthday, I expected something simple, a modest gathering, maybe the smell of a homemade cake drifting through the kitchen. Instead, as I sat at the familiar, scarred wooden table, my mother looked across at me and said, with measured calm, "We had to cancel your birthday dinner. We need the money for Sophia's Europe trip." The sting of being second choice, a wound I thought had long healed, reopened instantly. What they didn't realize was how dramatically my life had transformed since I last lived under that roof. 2 nights later, while we sat down for an ordinary meal, my phone buzzed, an unexpected call that would unravel everything I thought I knew. Growing up in Oakwood, California, a sleepy town with more oak trees than traffic lights, I was always the misfit in my own household. Our weathered blue house, with its squeaky porch swing and flower beds that rarely bloomed, was modest but warm. My father, Thomas, a retired engineer, spent his weekends elbow-deep in old car engines out in the garage. My mother, Laura, who taught third grade for over 3 decades, filled our rooms with the scent of fresh cookies and the hum of lullabies. Then there was Sophia, 5 years younger, radiant, and effortlessly the family's shining star. From the moment she took her first wobbly steps, she commanded attention. Ballet trophies, soccer medals, debate ribbons. Her achievements piled up like autumn leaves, each one proudly displayed on the mantel until the shelf sagged under their weight. My certificates of honor usually ended up tucked into a drawer, forgotten. Sophia has such natural talent, my mother would beam at church socials. And Kay, well, she's a very hard worker. The distinction was never lost on me. Sophia's brilliance was innate, while my successes were little more than the result of relentless effort. I was 8 when I brought home my very first perfect spelling test. My father glanced up, muttered a quick, "Good job, kiddo," and returned to his newspaper. That same night, 3-year-old Sophia stacked a few blocks in what they declared a remarkably advanced pattern. She was rewarded with ice cream, laughter, and endless admiration. This quiet hierarchy carried through the years. My straight A's were considered routine, hardly worth mention. When I made the honor roll, my mother would shrug and say, "Well, that's what happens when you study." Yet when Sophia earned her first B+, my parents whisked her off to dinner, calling it a triumph worth celebrating. Money in our household always seemed to drift like a steady current toward Sophia's pursuits. Private ballet lessons, costly soccer camps in the city, even custom-tailored suits for debate tournaments. No price was considered too steep. When I needed something more modest, like a graphing calculator for calculus, or hoped to attend a summer science program, I was gently reminded about tight family budgets and urged to earn it myself. By 16, I was working weekends at the local bookstore, stacking paperbacks and inhaling the scent of ink and dust, saving every dollar I could toward college. My parents had once opened a college fund for both of us, but Sophia's endless activities had quietly siphoned mine away. "You're so careful and responsible with money, Kay," my mother told me more than once, as though my forced austerity was a virtue I had chosen rather than a necessity I endured. Birthdays, once magical in childhood, grew into rituals of disappointment. My 16th dinner was canceled outright because it clashed with Sophia's regional dance competition. My 18th passed with a belated card and a wrinkled $20 bill slipped into my hand 2 days late. By my 21st, I no longer expected anything at all. No celebration, no cake, not even the courtesy of being remembered on time. The dynamic between Sophia and me was layered and complicated. She wasn't cruel or deliberately selfish. She was simply used to orbiting in the family spotlight, unaware of how dim the edges felt. I often resented the imbalance, yet I could never bring myself to resent her as a person. She was still my little sister. In those rare slivers of quiet when our parents weren't around, we sometimes shared whispered secrets and bursts of laughter that felt like real sisterhood. But as we grew older, those fleeting moments of intimacy became more and more scarce, like fireflies at the end of summer. My father, Thomas, now in his early 60s with calloused hands and hair turning steadily silver, had always been a man who spoke through actions rather than words. He fixed my car before I drove off to college, built shelves to hold my growing collection of books, and once even replaced a leaky faucet in my first apartment without being asked. But when Sophia entered a room, something softened in him. His voice quickened, his posture lifted, and he would ask about her day, her ambitions, her dreams. My mother, Laura, forever hurried, with reading glasses perpetually sliding down her head, ran our household with near military precision. She knew everyone's schedules, served balanced meals, and kept the house spotless enough to impress any unexpected guest. Yet when it came to me, her attention always blurred at the edges. She could recite Sophia's favorite color from each year of her childhood, but she bought me sweaters in shades I had loathed since middle school. Her care was efficient, yes, but uneven, and the imbalance etched itself into every corner of my memory. Sophia, now 25, inherited our mother's golden hair and our father's unshakable posture, and with them, a life untouched by real struggle. Her road had been carefully paved with parental support and resources, smoothed so thoroughly she never once stumbled. After college, an education our parents fully financed without hesitation, she announced she was becoming a yoga instructor. "I need to find my authentic self," she declared with serene conviction, and my parents nodded approvingly, as though this search for authenticity justified the thousands spent on her abandoned business degree. When I graduated with honors in computer science, my triumph was met with a card mailed from home. My family could not attend because Sophia's dance showcase had claimed their presence. I stood alone in a sea of jubilant graduates, watching classmates bask in the cheers of proud families while I clutched a thin envelope of congratulations. That day, in the shadow of my own achievement, I made a silent vow. I would create a success so undeniable that even my family, blind as they were, could not ignore me. Within weeks, I loaded my modest belongings into a second-hand car and drove north to San Francisco, refusing to glance at the rearview mirror. The distance between Oakwood and San Francisco measured only a few hundred miles, but emotionally, it felt like I was crossing an entire ocean. My pursuit of success began in a tiny studio apartment where rent eclipsed my parents' mortgage, and the walls seemed to close in with every sleepless night. Armed with nothing more than my degree and a relentless determination, I secured an entry-level coding job at a mid-sized tech firm. I threw myself into the grind, 14-hour days, every thankless project that colleagues sidestepped, weekends spent hunched over books and screens, teaching myself new languages while others sipped cocktails in the city's crowded bars. In those first years, I still called home every Sunday. The rhythm was predictable. My parents recited Sophia's latest triumphs in painstaking detail, tossed me a handful of polite questions about my little job, then hurried off to something more important. I never corrected them, never told them that I was quickly becoming indispensable at my company. Some part of me held back deliberately, wanting to prove, beyond all doubt, that I was more than a cog in someone else's machine. That when I finally told them the truth, it would be impossible to dismiss. Within just 2 years, I rose from junior developer to senior, then to team lead. By my 3rd year, I was running the company's most profitable division. Yet, the higher I climbed, the more suffocated I felt. The corporate ladder was not a summit but a cage, each rung a reminder that my ideas would forever be subject to someone else's caution. I envisioned breakthroughs in educational technology, innovations bold enough to reshape how the world learned. My supervisors, however, saw only risk. At 26, I decided to gamble everything. I emptied my modest savings, secured a small business loan through sheer persistence, and founded Novatech. Its mission was daring but simple: build adaptive AI systems capable of molding themselves to each student's learning style, so quality education could transcend the barriers of wealth, geography, or circumstance. Those first months nearly broke me. I lived on instant ramen, showered at a local gym, and slept on an air mattress in our cramped office space that smelled of old carpet and burnt coffee. Fear was my nightly companion, but so was resolve. 18 months later, that resolve finally bore fruit. A pilot program in 3 inner-city schools showed results no one could ignore. Test scores climbed 30%, teachers reported greater satisfaction, and student engagement doubled. A well-known Silicon Valley investor noticed. His offer, $5 million for a 20% stake, transformed Novatech from a fragile dream into a force. Everything shifted overnight. I left my shoebox apartment behind for a glass-walled condo in Pacific Heights, with sweeping views of the Golden Gate Bridge that made me feel, for the first time, like I had conquered something. Novatech upgraded to a gleaming financial district office with all the trappings of a startup on the rise: cold brew on tap, ergonomic standing desks, even a rooftop garden where employees brainstormed under the sun. But the greatest change was not material. It came in the form of Jessica, the executive assistant I hired to untangle my increasingly impossible schedule. Jessica, with her flawless organization and calm presence, quickly became more than an assistant. She was my anchor. She anticipated my needs before I spoke them, ordering my favorite Thai takeout when deadlines stretched into dawn, rearranging meetings when creative exhaustion hit, and reminding me, gently but firmly, to breathe. More than anyone else, she saw the truth beneath the polished success story. Jessica was the only person I trusted enough to tell about my fractured history with my family, and she listened without judgment. In her quiet steadiness, I found something rarer than business success: a confidant, and the first real friend I had allowed myself in years. "Your parents have no idea you're a millionaire CEO?" Jessica asked one evening, incredulous after overhearing another dismissive phone call from my mother. I only shrugged. "They think I work in some office, doing something vaguely technical with computers. I've never corrected them." Jessica arched an eyebrow, her disbelief plain. "That Christmas bonus you sent them last year was more than most people make in 12 months. I told them it was a company-wide holiday gift for employees' families," I admitted. The truth was simpler and sadder. My parents had never once asked for details about my work. In our brief conversations, my vague reassurances of "things are going well" satisfied them enough to pivot eagerly toward Sophia's latest yoga certification or her plans for another trip abroad. After years of being invisible, I had long since given up trying to be seen, but hiding was becoming impossible. My name had appeared in Forbes' 30 Under 30, my photo tucked beside a glowing profile of Novatech. What had begun as a sleepless gamble in a cramped office now stood at 150 employees strong, our adaptive learning platform implemented in more than 500 schools across the country. Only a week earlier, I had signed a $40 million contract with one of the nation's largest school districts, a deal that would bring our technology to nearly 1 million students. The success should have felt like the victory I had always dreamed of, and in part, it did. Proof that the long nights, the risks, the sacrifices were worth it. Yet the validation rang hollow. I had climbed every mountain I set before myself, but the one acknowledgement I had always longed for, my family's pride, remained beyond reach, in part because I had never given them the chance to know what I had become. As my 32nd birthday approached, I found myself staring at the single family photo on my desk. Taken at Sophia's high school graduation, it showed us grinning in the California sun, arms linked as if nothing could fracture us. Despite everything, the slights, the comparisons, the years of silence, they were still my family. Perhaps it was finally time to bridge the distance I had helped create. On impulse, I dialed my mother and told her I wanted to come home for the weekend. Her surprise was clear in the pause that followed, but she quickly recovered. "Of course, honey. We'd love to see you." I asked Jessica to clear my schedule. She offered to arrange a private jet, but I shook my head. "I'm driving," I insisted, feeling a pull to make the trip in a way that connected me to who I once was. Jessica studied me with a skeptical frown. "Do you want me to ship any of your birthday gifts to your parents' house?" The thought of my employees' lavish presents piling up at my parents' modest home made me laugh. "Definitely not. As far as they know, I'm just an ordinary office worker scraping by on San Francisco rent." That night, as I packed a simple weekend bag, I deliberately chose plain clothes over the tailored pieces hanging in my closet. A part of me wanted to arrive in a blaze of triumph, forcing recognition with symbols of wealth and success. But another, quieter part, the wiser part, knew reconciliation could never grow from resentment or display. If I was to be seen, it had to be for who I truly was, not for what I could flaunt. Maybe, just maybe, this birthday would be different. Maybe after all these years, my family would finally see me. The 5-hour drive from San Francisco to Oakwood gave me plenty of time to rehearse scenarios in my head. Would my parents notice the subtle changes success had brought? My more confident posture, the quality of my simple clothes, the absent worry lines that financial security had erased? Would Sophia and I find common ground as adults? I had deliberately rented a modest sedan rather than driving my Tesla, wanting to ease into revelations rather than announce them. Oakwood looked smaller than I remembered. The main street still featured Wilson's Hardware, Patty's Diner, and the Sunshine Bakery, but now interspersed with chain coffee shops and cellular stores. I drove past my old high school, past the bookstore where I had worked weekends, and finally turned onto Maple Street, where my childhood home waited, looking exactly the same, yet somehow diminished. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her face lighting up with a smile that made me question my resentments. "Kay," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that smelled of her familiar lavender perfume. "Let me look at you." She held me at arm's length, her eyes scanning me in that maternal way that made me feel simultaneously loved and evaluated. "City life agrees with you." My father appeared behind her, his tall frame slightly stooped, his hair thinner than I remembered. "There's my girl," he said, giving me an awkward side hug. His garage clothes had been replaced with a clean button-up shirt, his version of dressing up for my arrival. The house was just as I remembered. The same faded floral couch, the same landscape paintings on the walls, the same family photos where Sophia's achievements took center stage. The only notable addition was a large corkboard covered with postcards and brochures featuring European landmarks, a vision board for Sophia's upcoming adventure. "Sophia will be here soon," my mother said, ushering me into the kitchen where something delicious bubbled on the stove. "She's been so excited to see you, she just had to finish teaching her afternoon yoga class." I helped my mother prepare dinner, falling into our old rhythm of her directing and me assisting. As I chopped vegetables, she filled me in on neighborhood gossip, church activities, and, of course, Sophia's latest achievements. "The yoga studio made her lead instructor last month," she said proudly. "They never promote anyone that quickly, but you know Sophia, she just has that special touch with people." I nodded, wondering if my mother knew that I now led company-wide meetings with investors worth billions of dollars. "That's great," I said instead. She always was a natural teacher. My father sat at the kitchen table, ostensibly reading his newspaper, but occasionally glancing up at me with an expression I could not quite decipher. "How's the computer job?" he finally asked during a lull in my mother's monologue. "It's going well," I said, my standard response. "Busy, but good." "Making decent money?" he pressed, surprising me with his interest. Before I could answer, the front door burst open and Sophia's voice filled the house. "I'm home. Where's the birthday girl?" Sophia bounded into the kitchen, a whirlwind of blonde hair and athletic energy. At 25, she looked like a catalog model for activewear, her yoga-toned body clad in expensive athleisure clothes. "Kay!" she squealed, embracing me with genuine enthusiasm. "You look amazing. San Francisco must have some serious magic." Dinner was a lively affair dominated by Sophia's animated descriptions of her yoga classes, her recent hiking trip to Sedona, and most importantly, her upcoming European adventure. "I've been manifesting this trip for years," she explained, her eyes bright with excitement. 3 months backpacking through 7 countries. It's going to be absolutely transformative. "Sophia has been saving up," my mother added, though her quick glance at my father suggested otherwise. "Well, trying to," Sophia amended with a laugh. "Yoga instruction is spiritually fulfilling but not exactly lucrative. Mom and Dad are helping with the flights." My father cleared his throat. "Speaking of finances," he said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Kay, your mother and I need to talk to you about your birthday dinner." My mother reached across the table to pat my hand. "We had originally planned to have a nice celebration at Romano's for your birthday tomorrow. We made reservations months ago." I remembered Romano's, the nicest restaurant in Oakwood where we had celebrated Sophia's high school graduation. My heart warmed at the thought they had planned something special. "But we had to cancel the reservation," my mother continued, her voice apologetic but matter-of-fact. "We need to put that money towards Sophia's airline tickets. The prices just keep going up, and if we don't book soon, she might not get the dates she needs for her yoga retreat in Bali." The warmth drained from my chest, replaced by a familiar cold weight. "I see," I managed to say. "We thought we could do something simple instead," my father added quickly. "Maybe order pizza tomorrow night." Sophia at least had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I told them we could just postpone my trip, but the retreat dates are fixed, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for my career development." My mother nodded vigorously. "Exactly. You understand, don't you, Kay? You have your established job, but Sophia is at a crucial point in her career path. These connections could really put her yoga instruction on the map." I looked at their expectant faces, my mother's practical concern, my father's discomfort, Sophia's barely concealed excitement about her trip. After all these years, nothing had changed. I was still the responsible one, expected to understand, to step aside, to need less. I swallowed the hurt rising in my throat and forced a smile. "Of course I understand. Pizza sounds great." Relief visibly washed over my parents' faces. My mother launched into an explanation of which pizzeria made the best gluten-free crust for Sophia's sensitive system, while my father retreated behind his newspaper. Just like that, my 32nd birthday was downgraded and dismissed. I sat quietly, pushing food around my plate, fighting the urge to mention that I could buy the entire restaurant if I wanted to, let alone pay for a simple birthday dinner. But some stubborn part of me wanted them to value me without knowing what I had become, to see Kay, the daughter, not Kay, the successful CEO. As I sat there listening to Sophia detail every planned stop on her European itinerary, I wondered why I had come home at all. Some childish part of me had hoped things would be different this time. But here I was, 31 years old, accomplished beyond my wildest dreams, and still invisible at my own family's dinner table. The next morning offered no reprieve. My mother had forgotten to buy coffee I could drink, remembering only that Sophia avoided caffeine. So I slipped out for a walk to the local cafe, where the air smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, and returned clutching the lifeline of my morning ritual. Back at the house, energy buzzed in every corner, but none of it had anything to do with me or my birthday. My mother hovered over Sophia's passport, organizing travel documents with meticulous care, while my father hunched at the computer, comparing European power adapters with grave intensity. "Okay, honey, would you mind running to the store?" my mother asked without looking up. "We need ingredients for dinner tonight, and I just can't step away from this right now." I swallowed the familiar disappointment and agreed. Even on my birthday, I was useful mostly as a courier, a reliable set of hands to keep things moving. Driving the rented car toward the grocery store, I scrolled through my phone and found dozens of birthday messages from employees and business partners. Jessica had sent a picture of the towering cake waiting in my San Francisco office, captioned with a teasing message, "We miss you, boss. Need an emergency extraction from family duty?" The contrast between my two worlds struck me with new clarity. In San Francisco, I was valued, respected, admired. In Oakwood, I was simply Kay, the dependable, unremarkable daughter who surely understood why her birthday dinner must yield to her sister's adventures. That evening, we gathered at the dining table. My mother had ordered pizza as promised, half loaded with mushrooms for Sophia, though she had somehow forgotten that I had loathed mushrooms since childhood. My father brought out a supermarket cake with a lopsided swirl of frosting, and my name spelled incorrectly as K. No one had bothered to fix it. "So, Kay," my father said between bites, "tell us more about this computer job of yours. Still at the same company?" The question opened a door I had imagined walking through countless times, a chance to reveal the truth, to finally be seen. Yet when the moment arrived, I hesitated. "Still in tech," I said softly. "Things are going well." "That's nice, dear," my mother murmured absently, already pivoting toward Sophia. "Now, about your connecting flight in London." Sophia launched into an animated monologue about her European trip, detailing the Instagram shots she planned to stage at each landmark. My parents listened with shining eyes, offering advice and praise. "I might start a travel blog," Sophia mused. "Maybe monetize it, build a personal brand as a global yoga influencer." "What a wonderful idea," my mother exclaimed. "You've always been so photogenic, so creative." My father nodded, beaming. "Our Sophia, the entrepreneur." I nearly choked on my pizza. 3 patents, a multi-million-dollar company, technology transforming education for thousands of students. I wanted to tell them everything, that I wasn't just an entrepreneur, but a builder of futures. Instead, I reached for my water glass and remained silent. "Kay, didn't you do something with a website once?" my mother asked suddenly. Her brow creased as though trying to recall a faint memory. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed on the table. The screen flashed. "Office, Jessica." Normally, I would have excused myself discreetly, but my mother waved a hand dismissively. "Go ahead and answer, dear. We know your little office probably needs you even on your birthday." Something in her tone, light, almost mocking, snapped the restraint I had carried all weekend. I tapped speaker. "Hello?" Jessica's calm, professional voice filled the dining room. "Boss, I apologize for interrupting family time, but I need to confirm travel details for next week. Your private jet is booked for 7:00 a.m. Tuesday for the Paris meeting with the education minister. Should I reserve the usual suite at Le Meurice, or would you prefer the Peninsula this time?" The silence that followed was absolute. My father's fork slipped from his fingers and clattered onto his plate. My mother froze with her wineglass halfway to her lips. Sophia's mouth hung open mid-sentence. I stared at my phone, equally shocked. Jessica and I had no meetings in Paris scheduled, and while the company did occasionally charter private flights for international business, I had never heard about this particular trip. Jessica, I said carefully, I think there might be some confusion about my schedule. Oh? Jessica sounded flustered, very unlike her usual composed self. I am so sorry, Miss Reynolds. I've just seen the email from the French delegation. They've specifically requested you present the educational implementation plan in person. The board thought chartering the jet would be most efficient given your tight schedule next week. Shall I tell them you're unavailable? 3 pairs of eyes stared at me in stunned disbelief. I took a deep breath, recognizing that the moment of truth had arrived, albeit in a way I never expected. Please tell them I will need to review the materials before confirming, I said, trying to maintain my professional demeanor despite my racing heart. And Jessica, let's talk tomorrow about the travel arrangements. Of course, boss. Again, sorry for the interruption. Happy birthday. As I ended the call, the dining room remained a frozen tableau. My father was the first to break the silence. Private jet? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Paris? Boss? I looked at their shocked faces and realized there was no going back. I've been meaning to tell you all something about my work. What exactly do you do? My father asked, his voice uncharacteristically sharp. The newspaper puzzle he had been half-heartedly working on lay forgotten beside his plate. I took a deep breath. This was not how I had imagined revealing my success, but perhaps there was no perfect way. I'm the founder and CEO of Novatech. We develop artificial intelligence systems for educational applications. My mother's forehead creased in confusion. But you told us you worked at a tech company in an office. I do work at a tech company in an office, I said carefully. But I don't work for someone else. I own the company. I built it from scratch 6 years ago. Sophia let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Wait, you own a company that has private jets? We don't own jets, I clarified. We charter them when necessary for international business. But yes, Novatech is a significant player in educational technology. We currently have contracts with over 500 schools across the country, and we're expanding internationally. My father leaned forward, his engineering mind clearly trying to process the practical details. How many employees do you have? 150 last count. We'll probably add another 50 after our newest contract is implemented. And you're the boss? My mother said slowly, as if testing the concept. The actual boss of all those people? I nodded, watching as realization dawned on their faces. My mother's expression shifted from confusion to something more complex, a mixture of pride, embarrassment, and perhaps a hint of defensiveness. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, an edge to her voice that suggested I had somehow deceived them. When would I have told you? I asked quietly. Our phone calls last 10 minutes at most, and they're usually about Sophia's latest achievements. You've never really asked about my work beyond whether I still have the same job. My father flinched slightly at this, his eyes dropping to the table. Sophia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. We always ask how work is going, my mother protested. You always say, fine or busy but good. How are we supposed to know you were running some big, important company? Novatech was featured in Forbes last month, I said, unable to keep a hint of hurt from my voice. Our educational platform received a National Innovation Award last year. If you had ever Googled my name, you would have seen dozens of articles and interviews. My father looked genuinely stricken. We had no idea, Kay. That's the point, Dad. You never thought to look. You never imagined I could be doing anything noteworthy. My mother's chin lifted defensively. That's not fair. We've always been supportive of your career. Have you? I challenged gently. When was the last time you asked me a specific question about my work? When Sophia decided to become a yoga instructor, you researched everything about yoga certification. You know the names of her favorite poses and her studio schedule. Do you know the name of my company before tonight? Do you know what our software actually does? My mother opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, her expression conflicted. Sophia, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. So, you're like, rich now? Is that what this is about? You came home to show off how successful you are compared to the rest of us. Her tone held an accusation that stung. No, Sophia. I came home hoping to reconnect with my family. I deliberately downplayed my success because I wanted to be seen for who I am, not what I've achieved. But now you're throwing it in our faces, she said, eyes flashing, making us feel bad about canceling a dinner reservation when apparently you could buy the whole restaurant. I didn't plan for Jessica to call, I said, keeping my voice level. But yes, it hurts that after all these years, my birthday is still the first thing to be sacrificed. It hurts that you all assumed I would understand and accept it without question, because that's what I've always done. My father cleared his throat. Kay, we never meant to make you feel less important. We just thought... You thought Sophia needed the support more? You've always thought that. I finished for him. And maybe that was true when we were kids. But I'm 32 years old today, and you still treat me like my feelings and milestones matter less. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We are proud of you too, Kay. We've always been proud of how responsible and independent you are. That's just it, Mom. You're proud that I don't need you, that I never cause problems or make demands. You appreciate my absence more than my presence. Sophia pushed away from the table abruptly. This is ridiculous. You disappear to San Francisco, barely keep in touch, hide your entire life from us, and then blame us for not knowing about it. Maybe if you had shared anything real about yourself over the past decade, we would know you better. There was enough truth in her words to make me pause. Had I retreated too far, too completely? Had my wounds led me to construct walls so high and thick that no one in my family could ever hope to scale them? You're right, I admitted at last, my own words surprising me as much as her. I stopped trying to be seen a long time ago, but that doesn't erase the fact that you all canceled my birthday plans for Sophia's trip without a second thought. That pattern has followed me my entire life. My father rose slowly, his expression troubled, as though he were finally seeing me through new eyes. I think we all need some time to process this, he said quietly. Kay, I'm sorry about your birthday dinner. We should have found another way. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her voice trembling. Maybe we can still call Romano's, see if they have a table for tonight. The suggestion was kind, but the weight of it came too late. I think I need some space, I said, standing. I'll get a hotel room for the night. Don't be ridiculous, my mother protested, reaching out as though she could tether me to the house. Your room is all ready. I need to think, Mom, and make some work calls, I added, letting the excuse shield me from the sharper truth. I could not breathe under this roof tonight. Sophia folded her arms, her voice laced with disdain. Running away again. Some things never change. Her words struck deeper than she knew. Was I running? Perhaps. But staying in that moment felt impossible, the air thick with decades of overlooked hurts now exposed and raw. I'll call tomorrow, I promised, my voice steadying as I grabbed my purse and phone. We can talk more then. My father followed me to the door, his footsteps heavy. Kay, he said softly, almost pleading, I'm sorry. Not just about dinner. About a lot of things. I could only nod, afraid that if I opened my mouth, my voice would fracture under the weight of everything unspoken. Then I stepped into the cool night air, walked to the rental car, and only when the door shut behind me did the tears come, hot and relentless. Driving toward the Oakwood Inn, the town's only hotel, a place I had once thought impossibly expensive, I wondered if I had just shattered my relationship beyond repair, or if this jagged honesty might someday clear a path to something truer, something better. The Oakwood Inn was far from the polished luxury I had grown used to in San Francisco, but its so-called presidential suite, the largest room in the building, offered the anonymity and breathing room I craved. After checking in, I sat on the edge of the oversized bed, phone in hand, and dialed Jessica. "I'm so sorry," she blurted before I could speak. "I completely misunderstood. When you said you were going home for your birthday, I assumed your family already knew about your position." "It's not your fault," I said, exhaustion pulling at my voice. "Maybe it was time they found out anyway." "There's no Paris meeting," she confessed after a beat. "I made it up when I realized my mistake. I thought it might help save face for you." Despite the day, despite the sting, a laugh escaped me. "Well, you certainly improvised well. Now my family thinks I jet around the globe to meet foreign ministers on a regular basis." Jessica's tone softened. "Don't you, though? Last month it was the Education Summit in Tokyo." "That's different," I protested, though even to my own ears the words rang weak. I let out a long sigh, staring at the muted wallpaper of the hotel room. "The truth is, I don't even know what's real anymore. I've been living this double life for so long, I can't always tell which version of me is the act." After updating Jessica on the family drama and assuring her I would be back in the office Monday, I took a long shower and tried to sort through my feelings. The hurt was still there. A lifetime of feeling secondary did not disappear in one evening, but underneath it was something else. Relief, perhaps. The exhausting charade was over. I slept surprisingly well and woke to several text messages. My mother had written, "Please come home for breakfast, we need to talk." Sophia's message was shorter. "Sorry about last night. Kind of." My father, never comfortable with technology, had simply written, "Call me." Instead of responding to any of them, I ordered room service and spent the morning catching up on work emails. Around 11, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, my father stood there looking uncertain and older than I remembered. "May I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, noticing how he surveyed the suite with widened eyes. "Nice place," he commented. "Though, I guess you're used to better." "It's perfectly fine," I said, gesturing for him to sit in one of the armchairs by the window. "How did you know where to find me?" "Small town," he reminded me with a slight smile. "Margie at the front desk is your mother's second cousin. But don't worry, I swore her to secrecy. Your mother doesn't know I'm here." We sat in awkward silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Kay, I owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually." "Dad, you don't have to." He held up his hand. "Please let me say this. I've been thinking all night about what you said, about how we've treated you and Sophia differently. And you're right. We have." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. "When you were born, you were this serious little baby. You rarely cried. You slept through the night early. You hit all your milestones ahead of schedule. You were so capable. Even as a toddler, you would play independently, figure things out for yourself." He smiled at the memory. Then Sophia came along, and she was the opposite. Kicky, demanding, always needing attention. We got into the habit of focusing more energy on her because she seemed to need it more. You were always so self-sufficient. Being self-sufficient was not always a choice, I said quietly. He nodded, his expression pained. I know that now. We mistook your independence for not needing us, when really we trained you to expect less from us. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. I was proud of you, Kay. Always. But I realize now I rarely told you that. I just assumed you knew. I needed to hear it sometimes, I admitted. I needed to feel like my achievements mattered too. They do matter, he said firmly. What you've accomplished is incredible. I spent half the night looking up your company online. The work you're doing with those educational programs. It's amazing, Kay. Truly groundbreaking. The pride in his voice loosened something tight in my chest. Thank you, Dad. No wonder you stopped sharing things with us, he continued. We never made space for your success. We were so busy celebrating Sophia's small victories that we missed your enormous ones. We talked for more than an hour, unspooling years of silence, misunderstanding, and missed signals. He admitted how much easier it had always been to connect with Sophia's effervescent personality. Her openness drew him in, where my analytical nature reminded him of his own father, a brilliant but emotionally distant man he had never quite managed to please. I told him how I had interpreted their constant attention to Sophia as proof that I was somehow less lovable, less worthy of being celebrated. That was never true, he said firmly, his voice roughened with emotion. We thought you were the one who didn't need us as much. We worried more about Sophia because she seemed fragile. With you, Kay, we believed you already had the strength to handle anything. As our words slowed, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from my mother. Please come home. I made your favorite lemon cake. I showed my father, and he gave a small, knowing smile. She's been at it since dawn, calls it stress baking. The kitchen looks like a flower bomb went off. A lump rose in my throat. I should talk to her too. He nodded. And Sophia. She's struggling in her own way, though she doesn't know how to show it. He paused by the door, his hand resting on the knob as if weighing whether to say more. Finally, he turned to me. Kay, I need you to hear this. I'm not just proud of what you've accomplished. I'm proud of who you are, your resilience, your integrity, the way you chose to build something meaningful instead of simply chasing wealth. Even if Novatech had never existed, you would still be extraordinary. The words I had craved for decades landed with staggering weight. My eyes stung, and my voice wavered. Thanks, Dad. That means more than you'll ever know. When we pulled into the driveway, my mother was already waiting on the porch. Her eyes were swollen, her apron dusted with flour, her hands twisting in restless worry. The moment she saw me, she rushed forward and pulled me into a fierce embrace unlike any she had ever given. I'm so sorry, she whispered into my hair, her shoulders trembling. I've been a terrible mother. I held her tightly, feeling the tremor in her frame. No, Mom, not terrible, just human. We all make mistakes. Inside, over generous slices of lemon cake, perfectly tart and sweet, a small but meaningful reminder that my mother had remembered, she offered her own halting perspective. I always thought you were the strong one, she said softly, the one who could handle anything. Sophia needed so much reassurance, so much support. You seemed so capable, so sure of yourself. I was faking it most of the time, I admitted, the words heavier than I expected. I just learned early that showing need or disappointment didn't get me very far. Her face crumpled and she reached for my hand. Okay. I never wanted you to feel that way. Before I could reply, the sound of footsteps broke the fragile quiet. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her usual glow subdued. She lingered there, uncertain, before saying, Hey, can we talk? My parents exchanged a glance, then slipped quietly out to the backyard, leaving the two of us in the living room. Sophia lowered herself onto the couch opposite me, fidgeting with the corner of a throw pillow like a child again. So, she began, her tone uncertain, you're basically a tech mogul. I allowed a small smile. I wouldn't go that far. According to Google, you should, she countered. I spent half the night reading about you. The Forbes list, the contracts, the schools. Why didn't you ever tell me? I weighed my words. Partly because no one asked, and partly because I was afraid. Afraid of what? She pressed. That it wouldn't change anything, I admitted. That even if you knew I'd built something important, you'd still see me as boring, responsible Kay, the afterthought. Sophia flinched, guilt flickering across her face. That's not fair, isn't it? I asked quietly. You called me the birthday girl yesterday, but did you even remember it was my birthday before Mom mentioned canceling dinner? Her silence stretched, heavy and telling. Look, I continued more gently, I'm not blameless. I withdrew. I built walls. I kept my world separate from yours. But can you understand why? Sophia's eyes dropped to her lap, then lifted slowly. She nodded. Yeah, I think so. And I'm sorry. About dinner. About all of it. I should have said something. Insisted we keep the plans. It's not really about the dinner, I said. It's about the pattern. About always being the one expected to bend, to carry more, to need less. I never thought of it that way, she admitted. I just assumed that was our dynamic. You, the serious, successful one. Me, the free spirit who needed rescuing. Maybe we've both been stuck in roles we didn't choose, I suggested. Maybe it's time to see each other as we really are. Sophia hesitated, then reached across the space between us and took my hand. I'd like that. And, for what it's worth, belated happy birthday, sis. I know it doesn't undo anything, but you should know. I always looked up to you, even when it seemed like all the attention was on me. Her words, fragile but earnest, cracked something open inside me. For the first time in years, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, my little sister saw me after all. That evening, I suggested something different. Not Romano's, not the predictable fallback, but Alio's, the most elegant restaurant in the neighboring town, a place my parents had always considered far beyond reason. Over candlelight and courses plated like artwork, we shared a meal that cost more than their usual week of groceries, and for the first time in years, the conversation flowed freely. My mother leaned forward, asking detailed questions about Novatech's mission and the children it served. My father's eyes lit with curiosity as he pressed me for the mechanics of our adaptive algorithms. Even Sophia, who once rolled her eyes at anything remotely technical, listened with genuine fascination. We should plan a trip to San Francisco, my mother said between bites of tiramisu. See your office, your home, really understand your world there. I'd like that, I answered, and I meant it. 3 weeks later, that promise came to life. I stood at the private terminal of San Francisco International Airport, watching my family's astonishment unfold like a scene from a dream. My father circled the sleek jet, marveling at the craftsmanship as though he could reverse engineer its elegance. My mother clutched the brand new luggage I had sent ahead, still unsure she deserved something so fine. Sophia practically vibrated with excitement, bouncing on her toes like a child. I still can't believe you did this, she said for the 10th time that morning. Call it making up for lost time, I replied, smiling at her wide-eyed wonder. This time, instead of Sophia alone embarking on a European adventure, I had arranged an experience for all of us. A week in a sun-drenched Tuscan villa, followed by another in Paris at Le Meurice, the very hotel Jessica had once invoked to cover a lie that became a turning point. Extravagant? Absolutely. But after years of distance, I craved shared memories in a setting untouched by old patterns. The weeks leading up to the trip had already begun to rewrite our family story. My parents had visited my Pacific Heights condo, toured Novatech's offices, and shaken hands with the team who saw me not as responsible K, but as a leader. Watching me in that context had shifted something fundamental. Their image of me was no longer bound by childhood roles. Most importantly, I was no longer just the daughter who could handle anything. I was Kay Reynolds, CEO, innovator, yes, but also a woman still deserving of their care, their pride, their love. Our conversations grew more balanced. My parents asked about my life and listened to the answers. Sophia and I began to build something resembling true sisterhood, rooted not in rivalry, but in respect. On our last night in Tuscany, the terrace bathed in amber sunset and vineyards stretching endlessly into the horizon, my father lifted his glass. His voice, warm yet edged with remorse, carried across the table. "To Kay," he said, "not just for this incredible journey, but for having the courage to break our family's old patterns, for showing us who you are, even when we were too blind, too slow, to see." The clink of glasses rang like a benediction, and for the first time I felt truly seen. My mother brushed at her eyes, her voice catching. "And for forgiving us our blindness," she added softly. Sophia raised her glass, her smile tremulous but sincere. "To second chances and new beginnings." The sound of our glasses meeting in the honeyed Tuscan light lingered like a benediction. The ache of old wounds hadn't vanished. Deep patterns rarely fade without leaving scars, but something new had taken root. Understanding, forgiveness, the fragile beginnings of a more honest connection. The day after we returned from Europe, I surprised them again. Novatech would be opening a development office just 30 minutes from Oakwood. "We're expanding anyway," I explained, "and I've realized I want to be closer to home." Even more surprising was Sophia's request for an internship with our marketing team. "I still love yoga," she said quickly, "but maybe it's time I challenge myself with something different, something where I have to earn my place." My parents were changing too. My father began volunteering once a week at Novatech, mentoring young engineers with the same patience he once reserved for broken engines in the garage. My mother launched a reading program in local schools, pairing her decades of teaching with our adaptive software. Small steps, yes, but meaningful ones. For me, the revelation was simple, yet profound. True success could not be measured in contracts signed or revenue charts. The real wealth was here, in these renewed connections, in being fully seen and finally accepted by those who had known me the longest. The path forward wasn't smooth. Old habits resurfaced, sharp words occasionally reopened old grooves. But this time, we tried, each of us, to pause, to listen, to choose something better. On my 33rd birthday, we gathered at Romano's, the restaurant from the year before, once a symbol of rejection. No canceled reservations, no overshadowing priorities, just family, gathered without pretense. "I've been thinking," my mother said as dessert was set down, "about something you told us that night when everything broke open, about how we valued your absence more than your presence." I winced, remembering the bitterness of my words, but she pressed on. "You were right. We took your strength for granted. We assumed you needed less from us because you asked for less. That was our failure, not yours." "And mine was retreating instead of speaking up," I admitted. "We all played our parts." My father reached across the table, his hand closing firmly over mine. "What matters now is that we're writing a new story, together." I looked around the table at faces older, lined by time, yet suddenly new to me in their openness. And I realized the greatest gift of the past year had not been the recognition of my success, nor even their apologies for neglect. It was this: the chance to know and be known, to love and to be loved, not for what we achieved, but simply for who we were. The journey of healing was not finished, and perhaps it never would be. But sitting there in that familiar restaurant, once a site of quiet heartbreak, I felt a profound homecoming, not to a place, but to belonging itself. What began with a canceled birthday and a single unexpected phone call had become something I never imagined possible: a second chance at family. Imperfect, complicated, unfinished, but real. And real, I now understood, was more than enough.